Hi, my name is Kris Venezia. I'm an advisor at Eckman Wealth Management. Thanks for tuning into this YouTube video. Going to be talking about some basics of savings, and it's really a conversation I have very early in most relationships with clients to help frame. Well, I think it helps clients kind of frame, the different savings vehicles, most people have or, aspire to have, and the best ways to kind of frame them, which helps to utilize them. I'm in New York right now, so if you hear stuff, it's because I'm in New York and I'm doing this from a new laptop. So hopefully it sounds okay and I look pretty, and I'm getting a haircut after this, which is definitely needed. But let's get into it. So the biggest thing that I like to start with when I talk with clients, just starting out with somebody who's kind of at the beginning of, let's call it, their savings career, is to look at the different pots we have and to kind of go over the framework of how we want to use them and what they're being used for. Because really, that's one of the biggest things I find when I start working with someone is that they have, maybe a couple different accounts, but they're not entirely no, they're saving a little bit here and I put some money there and maybe put 20 bucks here, but there's not really any sort of framework around how that's happening. And there's a lot of advice on, you're googling things, you're keeping X amount in a savings account, but it's just the framework I think is poor. So the way I like to do this is I talk about it with the pots. And since this is video, I can use random things that I have grabbed to demonstrate pots just to give a visual cue. So we'll start with this one, which this doesn't technically apply for the last couple of years, but I did win our fantasy league twice. Let's call this our checking account. Nice part of the checking account, the pro of the checking account, is it's very liquid, easy to draw from, which is very important in our day-to-day lives, right? Paying bills, getting cash to buy things if you go to the farmer's market. The checking account pro is how flexible it is, and it provides us that ability to pay our bills and we can utilize it. The big con of the checking account is, there's not that great return on investment in a checking account. Most checking accounts that you're going to find, especially at the legacy institutions, are paying out. I have a Chase account. It gives me 0.01% of interest on my Chase checking account. So certainly I'm not being rewarded for the money I park there. So the framework for that checking account is we need money here. It's important to have money here for our bills, but certainly, as we talk about savings, our goal is to look outside of the checking account where we can to try and get some return on investment. So that brings me to pot two, which a lot of people have. We'll use it, the coffee I'm still drinking, Casita around the corner. Very good. Savings account, similar to the checking account in that it's accessible and less volatile when you compare it to like the stock market. A nice pro of the savings account is that, if you're choosing a good savings account, or well, I'll call good savings accounts that are out there, typically you can find American Express, Capital One, Marcus by Goldman Sachs. I know there's some others on the fintech side that are going to give you an APY of over 4%. So more interest available to you to receive in a savings account than you're going to get out of the checking account. Of course, the con of the checking account is it's not as liquid as the checking account. I think I'm sorry, the savings account, not as liquid as the checking account. So for the savings account, we're prioritizing savings for the emergencies. And the way to think about that, it's very individualized. If I have a client who, is, doesn't have kids, is renting, doesn't own the property, that client can have a lower cash threshold in the checking and savings account because there's not going to be as many unplanned expenses that are going to come up as opposed to the homeowner who is going to most likely have stuff that comes up, every year or every other year that requires thousands of dollars, or the client who has kids who, kids, things come up with kids, or daycare comes up with kids, or they get hurt. So when you have those types of situations in your life, the cash threshold needs to be higher because we don't want to be forced to go and drag money out of our investment accounts, right? The goal of the investments, if you're, kind of structuring those the right way, you want the investment accounts to have that ability to grow and not be kind of pulled. You ruin that compounding effect if you're constantly pulling from the investment accounts. So outside of that, I think the third common one people have, we'll use this really fancy bottle I got for Christmas. Cleans itself. Um, let's call that your retirement plan through work. A lot of people have company retirement plans. Big pro of company retirement plan is it offers tax advantages. You can make a pre-tax contribution, and that can lower your tax bill for your taxable year, which is great, especially if we're in those prime earning years. The money in your retirement account isn't getting taxed annually, so you're getting dividends and interest, and over the long run, you should be getting appreciation in there, and that's not getting taxed. So there's huge tax advantages for the retirement pot through work. The big con of that is, it's not as liquid as your checking account, as your savings account. You can't go to the ATM and pull 20 bucks out of your 401k. If you access most likely your 401k plan, there's going to be penalties and tax on that. So, big pro of this is long-term thinking, long-term framework. There's a lot of benefits there. Big con is it's not going to help us very much in the short term. So think outside of that, what do I have here? I have this tumbler, which we have never used, but we got from Hilton Head. I think it's from my girlfriend's parents. We'll call that a Roth IRA. Roth IRA is another form of a retirement account. The way I like to structure it and differ it, work retirement plan, think of it as tax savings that year. So typically when I work with clients, I set up the retirement plan pre-tax. Not always. This is just the typical framework. That saves them money in that calendar year. Money grows. When they pull it out later in retirement, taxes on it. Roth IRA doesn't have that near-term tax benefit. If you make 50 grand and you put 5 grand in your Roth IRA, you're still paying 50 grand of taxes for that calendar year. The pro of the Roth is the money grows in that similar, no dividends and interest taxes annually, appreciation over the long run. Then when you pull those funds out later down the line, you don't have taxes on any of that. And our goal when I'm thinking about retirement savings with clients is I want them to end up in a spot with both. So I want clients to have the pre-tax pot that when they pull from it in retirement, there's going to be a tax burden. I want them to have the Roth IRA pot that they can pull from and doesn't have that tax obligation. And what that enables us to do is it enables us to keep taxes low when we get to that retirement portion because I'm not forced to pull everything from a pre-tax pot that has a tax burden. I'd say that's with the older clients I work with. They've all done great and certainly enjoyed a lot of appreciation in the markets if they've been participating in a retirement plan for a while. Big negative, though, is a lot of them just never built up a Roth or an after-tax pot. So we have a situation where when we're looking at accessing money for bigger things, there's a tax burden there. And of course, the clients that are saying, leaving money to my heirs is a really big priority. Rules have changed, which makes, giving a 401k or IRA, those pre-tax pots to heirs, they're less tax advantageous to the heirs. So you're kind of trying to have those conversations of how to mitigate that if your ultimate goal is, leaving money to the heirs. But to get to it, the basic thinking, Roth, retirement plan, both beneficial, separate sort of tax rules around them. Both we want them to work together in the long run. And then I think that final one I'll go with, and this is the bottle I use, doesn't clean itself. Let's call that just a basic investment account. Some people open up at Robinhood, Schwab, just that individual investment account that you play with. This pot, big benefit, it has that potential for long-term growth with assets like stocks and bonds. Big con is it's more volatile than our checking and savings account. Right? We wouldn't want that investment account with stocks in it to be something we're constantly accessing once a month because then we're ruining that whole process of dividends coming in and compounding and growth. The way I like to think about the basic investment pot is, to me, this is that long-term goal pot. If you're in your 20s and you're saying, hey, someday I want to buy a home, this is that pot that we're saying, hey, let's start here. Let's build this up. We get closer to the home. Maybe we look more savings account than investing. If there's goals for fancy car, if there's goals for a boat, that's what this is really important to prioritize, to build up this pot. If a goal is retiring early, I think this is a really important pot because I need an account if you retire at 50 that we can pull from up until we hit 60 and we can start pulling out of the IRA and the Roth IRA. So, I consider that basic investment pot, that long-term goal pot that isn't retirement. So to kind of go back through it, you have your checking, that's a near term. Pro is it's very liquid. Con, you're not getting much of an investment. Savings, pro, you get a little more than the checking. Con there is you can't pull from it as quick as you can checking. There's certain restrictions on how much you can pull from it. The other con there, of course, is over the long term, most likely stocks, bonds, going to give you a higher return than that savings account. You have your company retirement plan. Like I said, most of the time, we want to set that up to be pre-tax, so we're getting tax savings on that. We're building up the pre-tax pot, Roth IRA. We want to build that up, so we're building up that after-tax pot, which eventually in the future we can blend the pre-tax and the after-tax to give us a really attractive situation towards retirement. And then you have just that basic investment pot. And that basic investment pot is your long term goals pot that isn't retirement and more aggressive and more volatile. But you're thinking there is, hey, I'm not accessing this for several years from now. And I think if you take that framework and you use that as kind of a basis, there's no correct way where I can say, hey, you specifically should put more in X or Y. That completely depends on your goals. If retirement is your main goal, retirement pots, those investment pots are going to be bigger. If you have kids in a house, there's more emphasis on the savings account because we need that money there when those emergencies happen. If you're dual income and you're sitting at that point where you say, hey, 5 years from now we want to buy a house, then maybe it's that basic investment account that you prioritize the most so that you can start building that up. And 3, 4, 5 years from now, look at it and say, hey, we've built something pretty attractive here. And that's kind of the general framework I'd say as you're thinking about the accounts in your life. That's the framework to go off of. And if you have that framework of, okay, this is its function, this is what it's good for, this is what it's not as good for, it should help you have a better idea of, as you're getting paychecks and as you're thinking about savings, how to think about where you want to prioritize that money. So that's the pods conversation. Do it with a lot of clients when I'm just starting to work with them to get their kind of framework on the different accounts we want to use. And ultimately, the final goal is you want all 5 of those pots set up in the right way, and you want savings going towards the necessary goals. And truth is, a lot of times there are multiple goals. People want to retire and they also want a house, and you kind of have to budget and plan your way around that. Once again, I'm Kris, Eckman Wealth Management. Thanks for listening. If you disagree or you have comments or you have questions, leave them below. Happy to answer them or address them or take care of them. Cool. Thanks.